One of these brides thinks most of her husband's old girlfriends were bimbos. Which one is it? Well, her husband is about to find out, and so are you, because it is time to play the Newlywed game. Hi, I am Gary Kroger, and welcome to the Newlywed game. You are going to meet 3 newlywed couples, and we will discover how well they know each other. It is very simple. I ask them questions about one another. Correct answers earn points. The couple with the most points at the end win a fabulous second honeymoon. Let us meet our first couple. She is a 37-year-old office manager. He is a 45-year-old Los Angeles firefighter. They have been married only 7 weeks. Say hi to Alison Neal McCaskill. Welcome to the show. Good luck, okay? Next, she is a 23-year-old student. He is a 23-year-old claims examiner. They have been married just 2 months. Let us meet Jeanette and Art Turin. Welcome. Good luck. Finally, she is 22 years old, and he is 28 years old, and they are both police officers. They have been married 14 months. Let us meet Natalie and Dan Anderson. Welcome. Good luck. Round of applause for all of today's newlyweds. Ready to go? Natalie, I am going to start with you. You are going to start this game off by looking at this monitor, where you will see Dan. The one thing my wife will not stop reminding me to do around the house is, okay, we stop the tape, because I want you to finish that sentence for 10 points. Natalie thought for a moment and said bad manners. Then the recording continued with Dan saying that the one thing she reminds him to do is feed the dogs. Natalie gave a small smile and said feed the dogs, baby. Gary chuckled and remarked that it was perhaps bad manners to forget such a thing. Moving to the next couple, Gary turned to Jeanette to watch Art on the screen. Art began the sentence by saying the one thing my wife wears in public that shows a little too much skin is her. Jeanette pondered the thing she wears in public that shows too much skin and suggested her top or her breasts. Gary clarified that she does not put her breasts on like clothing, so he asked for something more specific. Jeanette settled on a blouse or a top. However, ART's recorded answer was a little white see-through undershirt. Gary laughed and made a light-hearted comment to the audience about knowing exactly what Art meant. Then it was time for Alice to watch Neil. On the monitor, Neil said our favorite song is. Alice immediately answered I Got You, Babe by Sonny and Cher, and she was exactly right. Gary then decided to turn things around. He asked Neil to look at Alice on the screen as she said I can tell when my husband is lying whenever he. Neil had to finish the sentence and guessed that she would say he turns red. When the tape played, Alice actually said he acts innocent. Neil wondered how he did that, and Gary joked about it being a blonde thing. Next was Jeanette's turn to see what Art said. The question was the celebrity I would most like to kiss is. Art guessed Julio Iglesias, but Jeanette's actual answer was Nitro from American Gladiators. Art did not seem to care for that answer, and Gary decided to move on quickly to avoid any tension. Then Gary addressed Dan regarding Natalie. The prompt was I know my husband wants to have sex when he wears. Dan confidently guessed his Speedos. However, Natalie had answered nothing at all. Gary joked that nothing is just a little less than Speedos, but not by much. He then announced a short break, promising to be right back with the couples. When the show returned, Gary chatted with Natalie about how her mother was the reason she and Dan got married. Natalie explained that after they had broken up once, her mother constantly insisted that Dan was the guy for her. Her mother even gave her money to ask him out again. Dan laughed and admitted that her mother was always right, earning some points for being a good sport. Gary then turned to Art and Jeanette to talk about their proposal. Jeanette shared that Art had proposed right outside a restroom. Art explained that he had the ring and started feeling cold feet and a light head, so he felt he had to do it right then and there before he fell over. Gary called him very spontaneous and noted that Neil's proposal was also spontaneous. Neil and Alice shared that they had eloped to Catalina on a whim after a dare, finding a minister named Barbara Lovebunny to perform the ceremony. Gary updated the scores, noting that Alice and Neil were in the lead with 10 points while the others had yet to get on the board. He then introduced a multiple-choice round where each match was worth 10 points. He asked Alice what Neil thought when he first met her. What a face, what a body, or what am I doing? Alice guessed what am I doing, and Neil confirmed it was funny because he thought she was too corporate for him at first. Then Jeanette was asked why Art prefers to drive, because he enjoys it, he likes control, or it is safer. Jeanette correctly guessed it was safer, and Art explained a story about her taking her hands off the wheel to hug him during a turn. Natalie was then asked about the last time she and Dan made love, unbridled passion, the same old, or so long ago they cannot remember. Natalie guessed so long ago, but Dan had said the same old. The game continued as Gary turned the questions around. He asked Dan if Natalie said he was a trimmer, a tearer, or a lengthy grower when it came to his toenails. Dan guessed lengthy grower, but Natalie revealed he was a tearer who used a kitchen knife at the table. Gary joked that he was a terror as well as a tear. Next, Jeanette was asked what Art needed most, a gym membership, a new wardrobe, or a guide to better sex. Art guessed a guide to better sex, but Jeanette had said a gym membership because Art always complained about being too skinny. Finally, Neil was asked if Alice described the temperature in their bedroom as chilly, mild, or hot and steamy. Neil guessed chilly, but Alice said mild, explaining that she had not felt well so the planned hot and steamy night turned mild. Gary joked that the fireman came in and put out the fire. After another break, the scores showed Alice and Neil in the lead with 20 points. Gary then started a round called Secrets. He would reveal a secret told by the wives, and the husbands had to guess if it was about their own wife. If they were right, they gained 10 points, if wrong, they lost 10. The first secret was that the most annoying thing about her is she is always right. Dan correctly identified this as Natalie. The next secret was that his worst eating habit is burping out loud. Art correctly guessed it was Jeanette. Then came the big question, she thinks most of your old girlfriends were bimbos. Neil immediately claimed it was Alice, and she proudly agreed, describing a bimbo as someone with a big chest and long hair who followed him everywhere. The next secret was using the silent treatment to end a fight, which Dan correctly guessed was Natalie. Then Gary revealed that someone's wife thinks it is a turn-on when he talks like a duck. Neil correctly claimed it was Alice. The next secret was that a wife used to go-go dance in a cage. Dan correctly guessed Natalie, who explained she just loved to dance in clubs. Gary pointed out the irony since she now works as a police officer on the other side of the cage. The final secret was that a wife wished lovemaking sessions lasted longer. Art correctly guessed Jeanette, who had even timed a session to 11 minutes. Gary then announced the final round where a fabulous second honeymoon to the Caribbean was at stake. In this round, wives chose between two options, and husbands had to match them. The points increased with each question, starting at 10 and ending at 100. For 10 points, the choice was spaghetti or SpaghettiOs. Neil and Art matched with spaghetti, while Dan missed with SpaghettiOs. For 20 points, it was hard rock or cool jazz. Art matched with cool jazz, while Dan and Neil both matched with hard rock. For 30 points, it was Mountain Man or City Slicker. Dan missed, but Neil and Art both matched with Mountain Man. For 40 points, the choice was Fights Fair or Fights Dirty. Neil, Art, and Dan all missed as their wives had different views on their fighting styles. For 50 points, it was Road Warrior or Driving Miss Daisy. Art and Dan matched with Road Warrior, but Neil missed. For 60 points, the choice was Ever Ready or Always Tired. Dan and Neil matched with Ever Ready, and Art matched with Always Tired. Entering the final 100-point question, Alice and Neil led with 210 points, Jeanette and Art had 200, and Natalie and Dan had 130. The final question was first to the finish or ladies first. Dan and Art both guessed first to the finish, which was incorrect. Neil correctly guessed ladies first. With that final match, Neil and Alice secured their victory as the big winners of the show. They were thrilled to win the trip to the Caribbean. Gary thanked all the couples and the audience, closing the show with his signature sign-off, promising to see everyone next time on the Newlywed Game.